Hello, lovely dance people, and welcome to David's Dance Podcast. I'm your host, David Evans. We have an amazing dancer and educator with us today on the podcast. She's one of my favorite people in the world to work with. She is currently coordinator for the Center for Advanced Training at Laban. We are so pleased to welcome to the podcast, Mary Kinsella. Mary, welcome.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining today. In these kind of crazy and hectic times, as you're joining us in the middle of lockdown and in all the craziness of jumping back and forth between online and in-person training and education. Before we jump into that, let's start at the beginning and tell us how and why you got into dance.
All right. So I started when I was very young. I did just ballet, modern and gymnastics, and I absolutely loved it. It was my favorite thing. And then as a teenager, I did some auditions. So at 13 or 14, I actually auditioned for the Royal Ballet School, and I got there and I was like, what am I doing here? And then at 16, I auditioned for the dance strands of some musical theatre colleges. So that was Erdang, Bird and Lanes, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I did get offered places there, but I actually in the end decided to do my A-levels. And then I went to quite hardcore academic sixth form.
Right. Yeah. Did you do dance as a part of your A-levels, or was it extra?
No, it absolutely wasn't offered at the schools that I went to. They were very much into science and maths. So I didn't do science and maths. I did humanities. But it was still a very hardcore sixth form. So amidst studying and getting a part-time job and becoming more sociable as you turn 18, my dance training just really fell by the wayside. So I had this idea when I was 16 that I would re-audition at 18, but that never happened. And after finishing my A-levels, I did a gap year and then went and studied an anthropology degree at university.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't until...
Why at that time did... because that's such like a crucial moment. And I remember when I was like at that point of like, what am I going to do at university? And I kind of at the time was like, oh, dance isn't like a viable career. Like, you know, I enjoy it, but like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. And most of the degrees I went for were art hybrid degrees. I did go for apply for one degree. I think it was at Chichester to do fine art and contemporary dance. And I ended up doing art and philosophy at Reading. But everything that I looked at, I was like, okay, but there have to be societies there where like I can do dance a lot. But it wasn't really, I absolutely loved it. And I didn't really acknowledge to myself how much I really did love it. But I was like, oh, I could never make a career in that. And so it just wasn't really top of mind. So I kind of applied for kind of arts degrees instead. That other really viable career, as we know. Yeah, what was your thinking around that time? Was dance sort of, oh, that's maybe a career option, or had you sort of set your sights on something related to anthropology? Like, what was your thoughts?
So I did actually always think that dance could be a viable career option. I learned with my teacher from primary school all the way from when I was 3 up until I was 18, and she taught quite a few dancers who had gone on to be professionals. So I always thought it was a viable career, though let me caveat, most of the dancers that went on to be professional were male. I think it's just much harder for girls to get into it. But it was really like the lack of training that I did when I was 17 to 18 that really made me think, oh, I've skipped 2 like quite crucial years. And I think now, like even at that age of 18, I thought it's too late for me, because you look at dancers that go to the Royal Ballet School and other full-time schools like Arts Educational, Tring Park, when they're 13 and 14. And then you just think, I'm 18, I've missed 2 years, it's too late for me. So that's why I looked at other degree options, and it was between, for me, English literature and anthropology. And then I didn't know anything about anthropology for quite a while. until I was researching universities. And then I found this course, and I was like, wow, finding out about people and societies and culture. This sounds amazing. It sounds like something that everyone should do. It shouldn't just be like one specialist degree. I feel like everyone should have an elective option to do it alongside whatever they're studying. So then I went to go and do that, and it was amazing. It was so interesting. And yeah, like I said, I think it's something that everyone should do, and I think it's something that people learn like throughout their life anyways, just from living.
You did that at Durham, right?
Yeah, I went to Durham, up in the northeast. Lovely little town.
It's so funny, like, just going back to your previous point, how it's like even at 18 we're sort of educated that it's like, oh, you haven't really pushed your dance career yet. Oh, you're sort of like a spinster. Like,
yeah.
you're
a dance spinster.
You're past it now. Which we were sort of all kind of educated out of at Laban, which is great. So so you went and you sort of stuck with dance while you were doing your degree, and you were still it was still bubbling away in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't pick up dancing again until I got to uni. And like you, signed up for all of the societies. And then actually in my second year started teaching and choreographing. So I was teaching for the Uni Dance Society every Saturday. This was all for free. And choreographing for the Uni Ballet Company. And also for the competition team. So it was really amazing. But it was very much then like my choreography was just find a fun, emotive track, improvise to it in my bedroom, teach it to a group of people, find or make some fun costumes with the zero budget that we had. So for me, that was what choreography was. And it wasn't until I got to Trinity Laban that I was like, wow, there's so much more to it.
Yeah. And when you're starting learning to choreograph, like, that's totally fine to just make like really simple things just to kind of get going. Like, choreography is like really hard. And I remember I was like similar where the first time I choreographed, I didn't even want to. Someone from the Breakdance Society came up to me and was like, David, we're doing a show and you're going to choreograph it. I was like, no, I'm not. And he was like, yeah, you are. And that was literally like the first time that I was choreographing for a show was that way. And the first like 3 years that I choreographed I was either co-choreographing with someone, or I was assistant choreographing, or I had an assistant choreographer. And that's what I would say to people who, might not have access to like a choreography course, is just like, find a friend or someone you look up to who is good at choreography and just choreograph things with them, because you learn so much by peer learning. And it is really just at the beginning, just getting to grips with the basics of like, how do I put vocabulary together, teach that to people, put that on stage. Just kind of doing the choreography and getting it out there is like hard enough.
I know.
And so just spending a few years just kind of wrapping your brains around that is like so useful. So you were so you're getting back into it during that time. Was there a kind of moment or a period where you're like, oh, actually I want to take this like further, I think?
Well, I definitely did more dancing than I did studying at uni. So
same.
It just felt like
every time I would call my parents, they'd be like, I would just talk about dance the whole time, and they'd be like, how's your other degree going?
Same.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, same. So it just always felt like a huge part of my life. And then actually when I left university after those 3 years, and I think like a lot of people who don't go straight into grad schemes, I felt really lost and like quite bereft at having lost this like close social network, and also this routine and all this access to dance that I had. So yeah, I really wasn't sure what to do then. And again, by the time I left university, I was 22. So even more of a dance spinster, I thought. So,
and it's such a depressing time when you leave university. Nobody talks about that. Like, your leaving speech is like, go and conquer the world. And then you leave and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And you usually end up in like some like dead end or like minimum wage job while you're applying for jobs that you like really want to get, and while you try to figure out what you want to do as a career. I just wish they would just normalize that a little bit more and just tell
Yeah.
people, and if you're listening to the podcast and you're about to graduate university, just be like, you're going to be depressed when you leave, if you
Yep.
don't have like a job immediately lined up. Like, it is a hard transition, but you know, that's okay. And actually,
Mm-hmm.
like, it was only till I like started seeing friends again, and they're just like, I'm so sad. And you're like, oh, okay, like I'm not, it's not just me who's like
Yeah.
struggling out here. Yeah.
I completely agree. Like, I honestly think it is so normal for your 20s to be like a total mess. And you come out of being like in this really supported environment where you're just surrounded by your bubble of like friends and lecturers and advisors, and then suddenly you're on your own. And for me, coming from the small town of Durham back to London, I was like, just, yeah, felt like a tiny little fish in the ocean. So anyways, getting back to dance, I was going to go into international development. I thought anthropology, I've learned a lot now about how society and culture is created, and I feel like I might have some interesting input into this field. And I ended up applying for a government-run scheme called International Citizen Service, and worked with a human rights charity called International Service in Burkina Faso for about 3 months. And I was there working with an inclusive sports organisation called Handicap Solidaire Burkina, and I was actually teaching sports and crafts workshops at schools for children with disabilities, mostly hearing and visual impairments. And that was an incredible experience, and I really enjoyed teaching. I was doing a lot of gymnastics workshops, and it's amazing. They just like have very little concept of health and safety. They just throw themselves around, and you're there like, ah! But it was great. It was such a learning experience. But then it was really from that I was like, actually, international development I don't think is right for me, because the change and the progress that you see is so incremental. I just didn't feel totally satisfied. So I got back from Burkina in June, and I applied for the graduate diploma in dance studies at Trinity Laban in July, and then I started there in September. And I was doing that part-time. I was working at the same time, so it was meant to be over 2 years. And I met you, David, in my second year there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the rest was history. No, I think you definitely did it the smart way. Like, I did it in 1 year, which looking back, I mean, even at the time was just absolutely bananas. Like, because I was working Saturdays and Sundays as well, and I was driving there, and I was just overworked. And I think the way you did it, doing it over 2 years, and the way a few other people did it, was just so smart, just because it just allows you to pace yourself a little bit more. And I just feel like everything that you're learning and all the movement just gets a little bit better integrated into your body and into your practice, because it takes time for the movement to kind of get in there. You know, there is a bit of patience to it and a bit of processing that needs to happen. And I sort of did a lot of that kind of processing after my degree, of like all of this information like chucked at my brain and my body, and then me trying to work it out and like integrate it into my practice and into how I perform and work as a dancer. But I thought the way you did it just like looked so much more paced, and your development just seemed just kind of on the same like kind of trajectory, like even though you were doing part time, like just because you're able to just process things so much better. Yeah, what was your sort of experience at Laban? Like, how do you think, I mean, transitioning from like the academic world and then suddenly making that shift to dance training, how was that?
Well, yeah, firstly, addressing your point about doing it in 1 year, I honestly don't know how you did that and how the others who did it full time did it, because I did it over 2 years and it was still so intense. I think also because I did a lot of my credits in the first year, because initially I wanted to do it in 1 year, but finances meant that I couldn't. So I was like, okay, I'll do it over 2 years and I'll work part-time. And I'm so glad that finances forced me into that decision, because like you said, you just need to let your body process. And after I came back after the first summer, in between first and second year, I really was like quite a different dancer. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. It was totally an amazing program, and I feel like you really get out of it what you put in. So I've always been like quite a diligent student, and I was always there for every class. Was really trying to like, I was just really hungry to learn. I felt like when I went there, I felt like I didn't know anything. Well, initially when you go, you're like, okay, I've been dancing for a bit, I know what's going on. And then you go into Laban and you're like, wow, I really don't know anything. So it's just really, really hungry to learn, and getting involved in all of the MA projects and all of the extracurricular stuff that I could do, to just really like progress my technique, but also to like learn about the contemporary dance history, different contemporary dance perspectives, and like figuring out how to work collaboratively, and like experiencing ideas from lots of different choreographers. It was just an amazing 2 years of absorption, really.
That's where I feel like so much of the just benefits of Laban were really in all the kind of student projects that we were doing, all the, you know, mini performances, and working with choreographers doing an MA in choreography, and just different people's projects. Like, that was where so much of the networking and so much of the kind of working out your own style, and without the kind of pressure of oversight, it was like so much value in that. And I think that's, yeah, in that kind of networking, but not just like networking, but in a really deep way, and a real kind of collaborative way, which I think emerges quite naturally from Laban. They do structure it, but it's kind of one of those things where once you kind of create a structure for it, people just kind of take it and run with it, which I felt like Labaners definitely do, and you just see lots of collaboration all the time. And it's just one other thing I'll say, which is that although we talk a lot about like the intensity of vocational training on the podcast, that's also kind of what you pay for, and that was also why I feel like our time at Laban was so valuable. I feel like it was really good value for money looking back. I feel a lot more so than probably my arts degree, because you are doing a lot of hours. It is very intense, but they're giving you everything that they can, and they really are trying to do everything they can to prepare you for professional life and give you the best professional options that you can. You know, there isn't this kind of like floating along or time taking that you get in academia. We'll figure it out afterwards. They're like, we want to make you professional dancers, and we're going to do like everything we can to get you there in whatever form that may look like, or whatever your career may look like afterwards. And that might be like very different for different people. But I think I felt really invested in while I was there, and you're investing a lot yourself as well, and that's the only way to get the most out of it. Yeah,
I totally agree. Like, it was an entirely different experience from being at an academic university. Like, I'd never gotten to know my lecturers, even my like dissertation supervisor. I'd never got to know them very well, because they have like hundreds of students per lecturer and per advisor. And then you go to Laban, and it's like one tutor has about 5 or 6 of you, and you suddenly get to know your tutor so well, and there's so many contact hours. And yeah, I agree, I really did feel invested in, like the teachers there were really listening to you and interested in where you had come from and where you wanted to go. Because the program that we did, the 1-year program, had such like a plethora of different people. We had Ayunga, who was a pilot, and we had people coming from like, my friend in first year, she'd come from Google. She worked at Google, and she had done like a master's in maths. And we had a figure skater. It was just such a huge variety of people. And I think that's why, like, also why the teachers were so interested in us, because they were like, okay, these people have had these other careers and these other lives, and now they found their way together as this little bubble of like 20 to 30 students. What is it that is driving these people to now take up dance? So yeah, it was an amazing experience going there and doing that program.
Yeah, there was just, as you say, it's so rare that you experience dance with such a diverse cast of wonderful people and characters. Because I mean, if
Mm.
we had gone and just like done like a kind of standard BA, like it is, not knocking it, but it is mostly you and a lot of other like 18-year-old white girls, just, and that's
Mm.
like 90% of
Yeah.
of just because it's the demographic. um Whereas this was such like a random hodgepodge of like all these
Yeah.
wonderful people with like different life experiences. And I
Mm.
think it was like the most kind of enriching thing, because you had all these different perspectives. And anytime we had a class discussion, it was like people offering some really interesting views and bringing in ideas from their other jobs and from their other careers which they had had, and the other things that they had studied. So I think it's a great program.
Mm.
They're replacing it with something slightly different. I got a survey the other day. um, I think they're thinking about changing into a maybe slightly shorter version, so it's I think it's 6 months. So
Mm.
we'll have to keep a lookout for
Yeah.
what they do with that. But I think in whatever form it comes, I think it's a definitely one of the best things that Laban does for
Mm-hmm.
um, wannabe dancers and for the industry, by just
Mm.
offering up to the industry and the creative world people who are different and who have different creative backgrounds. And so they have something really different to offer, which has real currency in the creative realm, because it's all about originality and creativity. So if you have a different angle, that will get you somewhere, because everyone is already so talented. But you can't be talented and the same. You have to be talented and different. You have to be offering something, like, you need to have like a unique selling point, would be like the kind of marketing perspective, I guess. But because that's what our industry is about, like it's so especially important. um
Yeah.
hmm.
Yeah. Totally.
So during this time you started educating and working at Laban as well, and like a supporting uh capacity. Like I know you were
Mm-hmm.
teaching on the summer school and kind of various other forms. So how did you kind of get into that, and then how did that sort of lead you on to being involved in other kind of learning and participation things at Laban?
Mm. Yeah, so I applied to be a summer school assistant for my first summer, in between first year and second year. Didn't think I'd get it, and got it, and was so pleased, because um, you are assisting with the learning and participation team, and their coordination and delivery of the summer school, which is an amazing summer school that I think it's about 200 international people come and take it every year, and some of them dancers in training that want to go on to be professionals. Others just come every year and they work in the city, and it's just a great amalgamation of people. And I also got to do all of the classes whilst I was there as well, and that was so amazing. And I really, like, as always, threw myself totally into it. And it was really from that I got to know the learning and participation team, who was headed up by the amazing, sensational, trailblazing Veronica Jobbins. And actually, it wasn't until my injury, which happened in my second year of the graduate diploma, that I was suddenly out of action, couldn't dance, and the learning and
What
participation
was
team.
the injury?
So I had quite a serious injury. I dislocated my knee in February or March of my second year, so halfway through the year.
I
It was
totally
March.
forgot about that.
Yeah, I
Like, it
know.
was such a big deal and
It
such a
was,
big thing. And
yeah.
I literally like didn't even remember that happened until you said it. And then it
Oh,
came rushing back of just like you hobbling around and
yeah, on
like,
my crutches with my
yeah,
splint. Yeah.
and being
It
such
was,
like a sad puppy.
I was so sad. And honestly, it was like, when it happened, because at that time I was nearing the end of my second year, I was like feeling really ready to go out into the world and like start auditioning. I was going to, because I was in my second year and I had done a lot of credits already in my first year, I had a bit more free time. And because I'd started teaching, and the salary for teaching is better than all my shifts at the cafe and the pub, so I had some more free time to do more projects and also just go out and take open class. So I was taking open class at Central School of Ballet, Dance Works, The Place, Pineapple, Studio 68. I was also doing gymnastics training. So I was really like throwing myself completely into it. And then at that time thought that I was invincible, like really thought that my body was, the limits of my body were just infinite. Until at gymnastics I dislocated my knee and ruptured my ACL. So that brought that like to quite a sudden, my training to a sudden, extremely sudden halt. And one thing I will say of learning from that is that really like your body does have limitations and you need to get in tune with those, because I really thought that my body was invincible. And when I would see, I didn't take great care of it. And when I'd see other dancers like stretching, rolling out their muscles, taking maybe a day off, I was like, oh, it's because their bodies need it. I was like, my body doesn't need it, my body's fine. I would go home from like classes drenched in sweat in January. Yeah. I wouldn't cool down or properly warm up, and yeah,
you're just like, I'm a Spartan, I don't need to roll out. and then like, nope.
Yeah, I just wasn't listening to my body at all. And I thought it was telling me something that it wasn't. We were on different pages. So that happened. And actually my injury is a huge influence into how I got more into community dance, education, and the learning and participation team, because they came and approached me when their graduate intern, Emily Robinson, who is an amazing choreographer and dancer now.
She's great.
She's amazing. She got offered a job at the Place, and so they needed someone quite quickly to take on her graduate intern role as an interim cover. So they approached me because they knew that I'd had this injury and I was out of action. I couldn't teach, I couldn't dance, and so this was like honestly a savior. I came into their team. They really welcomed me in. They taught me more about arts administration and what goes on behind the scenes of like project coordination and program coordination. And I learned a lot there about the youth program, mostly was what I was working on then. And yeah, that's how I got into it, really.
That's great. How does the youth program vary from CAT?
So the youth program is open to any young people, and it's runs evenings at the Laban building, whereas the CAT scheme is auditioned for, and it runs all day on Saturday, and it's much more rigorous and intensive.
Right. Okay. So yeah, it's just kind of, and the Center for Advanced Training, that is really like a kind of prep for potential further study and looking at like a career in dance and kind of preparing for that. I think you kind of highlight something that I think is so important, which is just being kind of a bit of a yes man and just grabbing opportunities when they arise and when they come up. And honestly, the best advice like I can probably offer to anyone who's like, what do I do when I'm starting out, is just anytime you get an opportunity, just absolutely kill it. Like even if it's like a really small tiny thing and you're like, nobody's watching this, or or it seems silly, or you're like, well, this isn't my dream project, doesn't matter, just like show up and like absolutely knock it out of the park. Because there's always this thing of, you're never auditioning for just the person you're auditioning for. Like anytime you like go to an audition, you're auditioning for the job, but there's also like 100 other people in that room who are watching you dance and watching you work. And same when you're working on a project. Yes, there's the choreographer and you're going, oh, I hope they'll hire me again and like consider me for future projects. But there's also everyone else in the room who's like seeing your hustle, seeing your attitude, seeing how much you commit to it. And the people who see you on stage, who then like come up to you afterwards and say, hey, you were great. Like, would you like to come and do this project or this thing? And I think so much of probably the large majority of the jobs that I've gotten have been like that, where sometimes the job came from an unexpected place and I was working on something small. and I just hustled really hard on it. But then someone sees you working on it and then goes like, hey, you would be really good for this project. And that's something that I saw you do. It's definitely one of the reasons why like I enjoy working with you so much, is because you're kind of just up for anything, which is so important as a choreographer, having dancers who are open-minded and just willing to kind of give it anything and go, even if it feels like a little silly or out of their comfort zone, as opposed to just seeing them kind of switch off. Like, you just need people to just be kind of just really engaged in the process and like wanting to give it their all. Which is, I've had you dance in, I think, 2 or 3 of my projects. And it's been great every time. Just because you've been like so committed to the process. So that's all I can say. It's like, and your kind of like career, even in like education, I think is like the perfect kind of microcosm of that as well. Of like, you were just like, oh, I'm just gonna teach at the summer school, and you're like, oh great, I got this opportunity and I'm gonna do really well at it. And then another opportunity comes up and they're like, Mary, please help. And then I feel like every kind of opportunity that comes up is like, Mary, please help. But the important thing is that they know to come to Mary to ask for help is the kind of key thing, and making yourself indispensable in whatever capacity that like you're working in. So you were at learning and participation, and then how did you come into your current role as coordinator for the Center for Advanced Training?
Yeah, so it's exactly what you said. Like, the learning and participation team came back to me and asked after I graduated. So after the injury, I took a year out, did the cover role for the graduate intern at LMP, and then got back into teaching and graduated in July of 2018. And then in September of the same year, I'm just going to call it LMP, so Learning and Participation, shortened to LMP. The LMP team approached me and asked if I would do some interim cover work again on their community and professional development program, because they'd had some staff changes. And I was, of course, like, yeah, absolutely. It was meant to be 1 month. It got extended to 3 months, and then it got extended to a year, which I think is, again, just proving that you are responsible, like giving your utmost at every job that you are invited to. And then, yeah, the work just keeps coming. So I stayed there for a year, well, September until July. And then when it was nearing the end of my contract, because it was only a 1-year contract then, Veronica Jobbins suggested that I might apply for the CAT coordinator role. So I did, and prepped really hard for it because I really wanted to get it, and I got it. And then this is my 2nd year now working on the CAT. So I started in September 2019, and now this is, my 2nd year.
Wow. And tell us a little bit more about the CAT program. What's its purpose? What can applicants expect from the program?
So the Centre for Advanced Training, otherwise known as CAT Scheme, is a training program for 13 to 18-year-olds, and in some cases 10 to 18-year-olds, who show like a real potential in dance. And the Trinity Laban CAT is one of 12 national CAT schemes across the UK. What to expect is, well, TL CAT is all day on Saturday, plus 2 evenings in the week. And it's really a unique program in that it offers intensive and specialist dance training, but in an extracurricular format. So all of our students are still in full-time education. They're doing their GCSEs, they're doing their A-levels, and then they come to Trinity Laban outside of their school hours. So they're really getting such a broad and balanced education. Another important thing to note about the CAT scheme is that it is means tested. So the fee that you pay is dependent on your household income. And that's because it's part of the music and dance scheme run by the Department for Education. So it's really open to any young dancer, no matter their circumstances. And we've had young dancers audition who have had absolutely no formal dance training, and whose families have never been able to afford dance classes, because dance actually is really expensive. And it is quite a privileged hobby. But then if we see real potential, we invite them to join, and they can access this training on a full bursary supported by the Department for Education. So essentially they get all of their classes and all the extracurricular that comes with CAT entirely for free, which...
Wow, that's great.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crucial and so important in like making dance more accessible, but also in creating a future generation of dancers, choreographers, and artists who come from this broad range of backgrounds.
And I think you're absolutely right. It is quite difficult because dance is and can become very expensive. And it's one of the difficulties when you graduate as a dancer. I think it's one of the hardest things is still paying for dance classes, which like you're like, okay, I got to keep up my training. And then you're a dancer starting out, so so you're struggling financially, and then now you're forking out like big bucks for for a ballet class or for all these different things, and I think that's definitely been sort of one of the struggles, and I found one of the most helpful things for me is just meeting up with other dancers and just jamming and training together, and so finding a sort of like a group you can just be still working and progressing with and training with. I think it's fantastic that it is offering the bursaries and reducing kind of barriers, because we talked a little bit on the podcast about the issue of dance and contemporary dance and ballet as well kind of just becoming this kind of like middle upper class thing and not really being relevant for everyone. And the best thing I think is really that we can make a dance scene and a dance form that is accessible and exciting for a wide range of people. And so I think that's absolutely fantastic that the CAT program is doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I was so amazed when I learned about it. I didn't know that these opportunities were available. So yeah, I feel really grateful and quite privileged to be working on the scheme.
And how do you feel that the CAT program can maybe help people decide on a future in dance or be more informed about what those career options are? Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions and kind of just a lack of information, I guess, about kind of what a future in dance actually really looks like. And what way do you feel like the CAT program helps with that?
Well, alongside like the technical training, they have ballet, contemporary conditioning, a tutor session and creative classes each Saturday. Alongside that regular training, we also have a lot of extra days. So this Saturday, we've actually got Careers Day coming up. And it's different each year. We get different artists in each year. And this year, who have we got? We have got a production team coming in to talk a bit more about like lighting and production effects in the theatre. And then we have got some freelance dancers and choreographers coming in who are CAT graduates to talk a bit more about what it's really like becoming a professional dance artist. We also have 2 dancers coming in who are now actors. So we've got a workshop about acting and movement and how actors use movement. And then we also have a workshop about dance science. So we've got the Trinity Laban dance science team coming in to talk a bit more about that. So yeah, alongside building your physicality and your technique, you also like learn a lot about all the different opportunities in the industry. And we do have a lot of our dancers do go on to study dance training at degree level and higher education. But a lot of them also go on to do like apprenticeships, or they'll go on to study academic subjects at university. Or last year we had one of our students trained to be a paramedic. So it really is like, it's an amazing program that just goes into the melting pot of your life, and it teaches you discipline, creativity, how to build social relationships, which is just so important for any future that you go into.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds amazing. What a great
Yeah.
pitch. I think no, I think yeah, that sounds so good. And I think it highlights one of the really important things of just it is a tough industry, but also there's more opportunities and more careers than people
Mm,
would think. There's careers in dance I didn't know existed until I went to Laban, and I didn't know, oh, you could be a dramaturge. Oh, you could work as a dance
mm,
scientist. Oh, you could be a dance writer. You could be a producer for productions. All these kind of other careers that are out there and that people are interested in. Those are sort of what you need to kind of dig into a little bit. I think it's something
mm,
that um, one of the biggest misconceptions is people take a lot of dance classes and they go, "Oh, I love this. I'm going to love being a professional dancer." And being a professional dancer isn't taking dance classes.
mm,
Like,
mhm,
that's not what the work is. And actually, it's really good to just be exposed to what the work of a professional dancer is, whether that's if you are interested in teaching, then just teach maybe one class a week and just see how you find it. See, do I love this? Is this one I want to do? Is it, oh, I love this, but I want to maybe work with a different age group? um, or is it, okay, maybe teaching's not for me? For me, like, being involved in the choreographic process at Laban was so important because that's the thing that I love. Even when I'm a dancer, I'm actually not that fussed about being on stage. Like, I could
mm,
probably not be on stage again and I would just be like totally fine. But I love being involved in the choreographic process, either as the artist myself or as like a dancer contributing to someone else's process. And so for me, and you don't experience that in like a normal dance class.
mhm,
And so I think being exposed to that from like a careers point of view and just finding out what the work actually is, and if you enjoy that, is so crucial because sometimes I think people get maybe sort of disenchanted with dance, uh, and and they go, "Oh, I did the job. I got a job in dance, and I'm not enjoying it, and I'm not
mm,
happy." And maybe you had the right passion, but the wrong job. And it
mm,
might be that you could still work in dance, but you just might need a different role in dance that might just like suddenly light that fire of going, oh, actually, I need to be performing. Oh, actually, performing isn't for me. Actually, I need to be working in community dance. And actually,
mhm,
that's what I care about. And that's what is the kind of role that I enjoy. And so I think that that's something that is absolutely fantastic that the CAP program's doing, that you are providing education on what these different roles are. I think it's great.
mhm. Yeah, and it totally like relates to my own experience and my own trajectory as well, because I was always obsessed with like the visceral physicality of dance, and I just wanted to like fly and soar and just yeah, I just wanted to be an athlete. And then my injury happened, and I got more into community dance and learning participation in the CAT scheme, and I was like, wow, this is actually extremely fulfilling, like seeing the young people getting these places and learning and finding their own creative voice, and me helping being a part of facilitating that. Yeah, I'm just so grateful that I found it, and that my injury, as devastating as it was, led me to where I am now. And I still get to be a part of it, and I still get to, it's a part-time job there, so I still get to do all the other projects on the side that I have time for.
That's awesome. And I know at the minute as well, you're doing some ballet teaching, which is
Mm-hmm.
available online during lockdown. Tell us a bit
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, so I got into ballet teaching as I've done ballet since I was 3, and it's quite, for me, like an easy structure to teach. It's a very quite strictly structured class of like bar and then the same exercises in the centre. So I got into that, and I've been teaching that now for about 3.5 years. And I have an amazing group of students that I have been coming to my classes for a long time, and we've moved online and offline and online and offline, and we're back now online. So yeah, we're still going. I really enjoy being a bit more creative with my developing of exercises. It's just really like bringing some of the old choreography skills to the forefront, just finding some fun music and not using the classical ballet piano tracks. And for an adage in the center, I don't really do an adage. I just do like a full-blown routine with a bit of everything in it. And yeah, I really enjoy it because my cat role is a lot behind the desk and in the studio, but mostly being an outside eye in the studio and watching. And then I just love getting to go and teach and just, yeah, move my body, use my muscles.
Awesome. That sounds so good. We'll pop a link in the description so those who want to join in on Mary's classes can click through to that and sign up. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, Mary. Where can people follow you on social media? Where's best to find out about what you're doing?
Best place to follow me is Instagram at mary.kinsella. Best place to find out about Trinity Laban Cat is the trinitylaban.ac.uk website, and just search for Centre for Advanced Training. And if you're not local to London, but you have or you know some young dancers that might be interested in the cat scheme, then look on the nationaldancecats.co.uk website, or is it .ac.uk? We'll put it down in the description, and you can see some of the other 11 cats that are around the country.